Thank you very much, Lorraine. And may I just at the outset be associated with what Joan has said in relation to the family of Ricky Olasagi, and to pass on our condolences to them. I'd like to begin by thanking Labour Youth for hosting these election hustings as part of the annual Tom Johnson Summer School. Debate, argument, and the contest of ideas have always been central in the life of the Labour movement. And Labour Youth are to be congratulated for keeping this tradition very much alive year to year. I had the pleasure last night of sitting in on the talk given by Richard Wilkinson, most insightful, interesting lecture, demonstrating again, as he has in his work, that economic inequality harms society in so many ways, right through to every single aspect of people's lives, including their health and their well-being. I think Richard's talk also recalled very much the fundamental tenets of social democracy: community, equality, and social justice. And these are the principles that I grew up with. From a very young age, I knew about Labour and the Labour Party and what we have always fought to achieve. I remember my dad talking about attending Jim Larkin's funeral in 1947, along with my granddad. Both my father and grandfather were railwaymen. They were active trade unionists and very strong Labour people. In common with many in my generation, I was the first in my family to go to university. It was an incredible opportunity, and it shaped my life. I studied sociology in TCD, became a student activist, a campaigner, and an advocate for change. In those years, we campaigned on issues that seem so distant now: for contraceptive rights, for repeal of homophobic laws, and for democratic rights in Eastern Europe. I know that Labour Youth, Labour Equality, and Labour Women continue campaigning on many issues that still need to be settled in our country, like reproductive rights and marriage equality. And I want to say that I fully support you in these endeavours. In my 20s and early 30s, I spent 10 years as a producer in RTE, running daytime radio programmes like The Gay Byrne Show. I became a trade union activist during my time there, and went on to be closely involved as well in the early years of SIPTU. After RTE, I worked for almost 20 years as an employment lawyer, representing workers dismissed from their employment or suffering discrimination or accidents at work. I joined the party then in 1998 in Dublin South. I've been a public representative for 10 years. I was elected to the Dáil for the first time in February 2011. As a junior minister in the Department of Health, I negotiated and delivered on Labour's commitment to legislate for the X case. I secured government agreement on the alcohol strategy, the very first time in this country that alcohol misuse is being addressed in public health legislation. And just this week gone by, the committee stage of the Free GP Care Bill, the under sixes legislation, was completed in the Dáil. This is the first step in delivering universal primary care in our country, and I am honoured to be the minister responsible for this project. We are right to be proud of our record in this party and of our history. But however great our history, however inspiring it may be, the past cannot guarantee us a future. The fact that we have been around for 100 years does not in itself guarantee that we'll still be around in 100 years' time, or even in 20 years' time. We suffered a bruising defeat a few weeks ago. Since then, I've heard it said more than once, look, we've been here before, for example, in 1985, and that within a few years, we were back on track. And there's some truth in this. We are resilient. We have been in tight corners before, and we have pulled through. But, and this is my message here this afternoon, the recovery of this party is not guaranteed. There's no certainty that the pendulum of history will swing back in our direction. There's no certainty that this party will survive as a major political force into the future. We cannot simply assume that the voters who deserted us in such numbers on the 23rd of May will come back sooner or later. The stark truth is that they will only come back if we respond to the message that they sent us on that day in May. And that message was stark, very stark. Quite simply, they told us to change or move off the stage. And we need to change our message. We need to change the way we do things. We need to change the image we present to the electorate. That process of change will take time. It will not happen overnight. But we have the opportunity to start that process when we elect a new leader on the 4th of July. Now, our message to the people of Ireland essentially has been that things would have been worse if Labour were not in government. Very much worse. And I believe that. I do believe that we have saved the country. I do believe we did a job that needed to be done. That said, colleagues, true and all as that message may be, it clearly cut little ice with the electorate on the 23rd of May last. And I have to say there's little reason to believe that it will fare any better in 18 months' time. We need to change the message. When we go to the electorate in 2 years' time, it will not be enough for us to point to our record and ask them to imagine how much worse things might have been. We'll need to tell people that the lost decade is over. We will need to present them with a vision for the future that is relevant to them and their families. We'll need to offer people policies on health, on pensions, on taxes, on social change. Policies that will make life better for people and for their children and families. It needs to be a positive, forward-looking message that speaks to the lives of the people we look to represent. And when we're talking about the message, I think some self-reflection would be worthwhile too. How often have we said, when we're pressed about our record in government, that we deserve credit for making the tough decisions or the hard choices? We need to ask ourselves what we mean by this. Tony Judd, and I've the quotation on the screen, the renowned social historian, has observed that, and I quote, "The poor vote in much smaller numbers than anyone else. So there is little political risk in penalising them." Just how hard are such choices? These days we take pride in being tough enough to inflict pain on others. If an older usage were still in force, whereby being tough consisted of enduring pain rather than imposing it on others, we should perhaps think twice before so callously valuing efficiency over compassion. Earlier this week, we were treated to another lecture in fiscal orthodoxy by our friends at the IMF in Washington. We were told once again that we should take €2 billion out of our economy in the 2015 budget. In the rarefied world of the IMF, this counts as a fiscal adjustment, as it's known. Those of us who live in this country know the reality behind those anodyne words, fiscal adjustment. A €2 billion adjustment means more cuts in public services, more taxes and charges on our people, more suffering and distress for people who have already given too much. Let me be clear about this once again. If I am elected as leader of this party, there will be no adjustment of €2 billion or anything close to it. Enough is enough. And a final word to the IMF. It would be a lot better if they were to give us some real assistance rather than sanctimonious lectures. And they could start with the excessive interest rates they are currently charging us. We are living in an age of uncertainty. The austerity burden is exacerbating income and intergenerational inequalities. All the evidence is that younger people have been the most acutely affected by the crisis, specifically with the rise of youth unemployment, the increasing use of zero-hour contracts, and the decline in incomes. These are critical challenges for us in the period ahead. And so, our task is firstly to recover, to renew our party, to focus on a realisable set of objectives for the remaining lifetime of this government, and to prepare a manifesto together for the party to present to the people at the next general election. As well as getting our message right, we need to reinvigorate our organisation, to help the members of the party to work better together, to involve people in a real way in policy making, to use information technology to better effect. In 10 years' time, this party and our social democratic project will be led by a new generation of men and women. I believe the change we need must start now, and I want to lead that change, to be a bridge to that new generation of our party. And so I am asking for your support on July the 4th to make that happen. Thank you for your attention.